So this is more a collection of stories, and I haven't told them in a while because even thinking about it freaks me out, not to mention makes me question my own sanity. Anyways, here goes. To preface, when I was entering 5th grade, my dad's company gave him an opportunity to transfer to an overseas job in Florence, Italy. My parents obviously jumped at the chance, and we lived over there for 3 years, which was an awesome experience for the most part. The first few months we lived in an apartment across from Santo Spirito Cathedral, and then moved out to a small town in Tuscany called Impruneta, where my father's company basically paid for us to live in this awesome Italian villa. I mean 7 bedrooms, 5 baths, biggest effin' house I'd ever seen. We get to speaking to the farmer who works the olive orchards around the house, and who knows the family who has owned it for centuries, and find out that the oldest part of the house was a 500-year-old hunting lodge owned by the Pitti family, and then the rest of the villa was built around it in the late 1700s. Since we were renting it, it came furnished with all sorts of cool old furniture, art, etc. My father, in a conversation with the neighbors, heard from them some anecdotal stories about the monk ghost who haunted the house, guarding the Pitti's forgotten treasure or some such bullshit. So he thought. And he told my mom, but they didn't tell me sister and I because they didn't think it was a true story, and they didn't want to freak my sister and I out. The first thing I remember being weird about the villa was that I was never comfortable being there alone. I've been a very solitary person my entire life, and I usually enjoy time by myself. However, I can remember right from the start that any time my parents would leave me alone there, I would feel like I was being watched and/or there was another presence in the house. I spent months convincing myself it was just nerves, that I wasn't used to living there, or that the huge size of the house was what was freaking me out. Then I noticed that our cats, we had one house cat when we moved in, but we also adopted the 4 to 5 cats that roamed the property, and some of them moved into the house, would act strange sometimes, staring at empty spaces, running up to a spot like they would a person, when there was nothing there, but it seemed like I only noticed them doing it when I was there alone. By the end of our first year in the house, I was terrified of being left alone. My parents thought I was crazy, and whenever I was there by myself, which was rarely, I would lock myself in my bedroom with 1 or more cats, who I thought could protect me. I don't know how, or why, it just seemed like a good idea at the time. At the same time, I started noticing noises at night, scrapings, clawings, that sort of stuff, but when I would freak out, my dad would come in and remind me that the house was hundreds of years old, and there were probably mice, bats, and other critters above my room making the noises. It made sense to me, but I can't even begin to recount how many nights I got woken up by these strange noises that seemed too loud or persistent to be a mouse. I started to occasionally hear random doors shutting, those sorts of things, but by this point I just kept it to myself, because my parents were already thinking I was crazy. After about a year living in this villa, our relatives started to fly over from the States to come visit us. I mean, they basically got a vacation in Tuscany for the price of a plane ticket, so we had guests at least once a month, if not more. The first major incident I remember was when my aunt and uncle and 2 cousins came and visited, and stayed in the apartments that were originally the 2nd floor of the hunting lodge. I'll mention briefly that it seemed a majority of the incidents, noises, etc. seemed to all originate from the oldest part of the house, which was the 3 floors of the original hunting lodge, the root cellar below it. There were 2 adjoining bedrooms, with a bathroom opening onto the front bedroom, and my aunt and uncle slept in this front bedroom, my cousins in the back. Long story short, my cousin Casey woke up to go pee at like 5 in the morning, walked into the bathroom half asleep, and saw a man standing in there, so he turned around and sat on the chair outside the bathroom door. He had been sitting there for a couple minutes when my aunt sat up and asked him what he was doing, and he told her, waiting for Dad to get out of the bathroom, to which she replied, Dad is still in bed, right here, and he was. Needless to say, by the time breakfast came around, we had all heard the story, and it was at this point that my father finally made mention of the ghost stories he heard from the neighbor, and that supposedly this was the reason the villa had been empty for a few years till we started renting it, because the last people to live there had been freaked out. I pretty much flipped my shit on all of them, because I felt like everything I had experienced finally made sense, and they had been making me feel insane by passing off my experiences as something I made up in my head. After it was out in the open in my family, we all started noticing how frequently weird things happened in that house, and I'll just list a few examples. My sister had a slumber party for her birthday, with 5 to 6 girls, and my mom sat out in the stairwell around midnight for a bit to make sure they all went to bed. She started hearing furniture being dragged around, and went down to see what the girls were up to, but they were all in bed talking, and no furniture was moved. A week later, my parents had the owners come out and open up the third floor of the hunting lodge, which were 2 rooms they kept locked up as storage, and inside there were several large wardrobes, dressers, and other pieces of furniture that had been dragged around at random. You could see the trails through the dust where they had moved, anywhere from a few inches to several feet. The owners got mad at us, thinking that my sister or I had managed to break in and mess with their stuff, but the door was locked, and my dad pointed out that there were no footprints. The owners kind of freaked out, made a bunch of hurried excuses and dismissive gestures. Italians are great at both, lol, and left pretty fast. This isn't nearly as convincing, but I always thought it was strange. In Italy there were these barn owls that make this horrible screeching noise that I can only describe as a combination of a woman being murdered and the spawn of Satan, if you don't believe me. But the weirdest thing was they would sit on our windowsills for hours at night screaming repeatedly, to the point where my entire family was at their wits' end. They would also fly into the window screens if we stood by the windows at night, like they wanted nothing better to do than to rip us apart. I swear to God this is true. It happened multiple times, including once when my dad was taking a shit and left the bathroom window open. Owl hit the screen, and my dad always said, "Thank God I was on the toilet, lol." This is getting a lot longer than I meant it to be. I guess I got carried away. I hardly ever tell this story, because I get completely creeped out, covered in goosebumps and shaking right now, haha. And I've always felt like I've never been the same since we lived there. The strangest part was that feeling that you weren't alone. I never felt threatened physically by this presence, and for the last year we lived there my parents would always refer to it as the friendly ghost, but I don't think it was friendly either. Whatever it was, it just watched us. Anyways, I know it probably sounds like a whole load of bullshit, but I know what I experienced and what I saw, so think what you want.